When I saw my nameplate on the wedding table, white cursive letters spelling charity case, I thought it was some kind of cruel joke. But no one was laughing. The laughter was around me, bright, shallow, echoing through crystal glasses and clinking cutlery. I could hear the live band playing a slow country tune in the background, and the scent of roasted salmon mixed with expensive perfume made my stomach twist. I stood there, in my pale green dress I'd saved up for, clutching the little purse I'd borrowed from my friend Lisa. My brother Nathan was standing just a few feet away, his arm around his new bride, smiling as though the world was perfect. But that nameplate, that single, humiliating nameplate, cut through me more deeply than any insult ever had. Someone had done this intentionally. Someone wanted to make a point. And at that moment, surrounded by gold-rimmed champagne glasses and laughter that wasn't meant for me, I realized this wedding wasn't my brother's fairy tale. It was my public humiliation. Before that day, I'd told myself I was ready to show up alone, smile through the questions, and support my brother like a proud sister should. Nathan and I weren't always close, but he was the only family I had left who really mattered. After Mom passed and Dad remarried, we'd both gone through our own storms. I'd taken on bills, cared for Mom through her illness, and tried to keep my job at the bakery despite the long hours and unpredictable shifts. Nathan had always been the golden one, the one who somehow landed on his feet no matter how hard he fell. He was charming, confident, and people just liked him. When he met Emily the bride, it was at one of those charity fundraising events at his company. She was everything Nathan had always dreamed of, graceful, polished, with that kind of expensive calmness that made you feel self-conscious, just standing beside her. I met her once before the wedding, at a family dinner. She smiled at me, polite, but distant the way someone does when they've already made up their mind about you. She'd said, "Oh, Nathan's told me all about you. You're the one who does the baking, right? That's sweet, not nice, not impressive, just sweet." Like she was talking about a hobby, not the small business I'd been building from my apartment kitchen for 3 years. Still, I told myself it didn't matter. Family was family. When the wedding invitation came in the mail, gold-foiled and perfect, I smiled. It wasn't lost on me that mine was addressed only to Miss Grace Thompson. No +1, no one guessed. But I brushed it off. I'd been single for 2 years since my breakup with Brian, and I wasn't about to let that define me. I even bought a new dress, soft sage green with a simple neckline. It wasn't flashy, but it made me feel like myself. Calm, gentle, enough. I arrived early that morning, offering to help with setup like I'd promised Nathan. The hotel ballroom was breathtaking ivory linens, floating candles, white roses in tall crystal vases. It was the kind of wedding you only see on Pinterest, and I was proud of him, truly. Nathan hugged me tight when he saw me. "Grace, you look beautiful. Thanks for coming early." He smelled like cologne and nerves. His smile was real, or at least I wanted to believe it was. Emily walked in behind him, dressed in a silk robe with her hair already pinned. "Grace," she said, glancing at the trays of place cards I was sorting through. "Oh, perfect. Could you make sure everyone's nameplates are set on the right tables?" I wanted all to look cohesive. "Of course," I said. So I did. I walked around, matching each elegant little card with its assigned seat. Mr. and Mrs. Clark, Rebecca Clark 1, David and Melissa Rowe. Every card was written in silver calligraphy on white stock, simple and classic. Until I got to mine, it wasn't white, it was pink. The same shade of pink as the bridal party decor, but it stood out too obvious, too intent. Ional. And the name, Charity Case. At first, I thought maybe it was a placeholder. Maybe the real one had gotten misplaced. But as I scanned the table, I noticed every other name was perfect. Only mine looked like a cruel joke at a high society dinner. A part of me laughed nervously. "Emily?" I called out, my voice catching. "I think there's been a mistake." She turned, holding her bouquet, her face calm. "Oh, what is it?" I held up the card. This says Charity Case. "I'm sure that's not meant for me." Her smile didn't waver. "Oh, that must have been Nathan's idea," she said smoothly. "He said you've always been our little family charity case, helping out here and there." She said it so gently, like it was supposed to be funny. But my brother, he didn't laugh. He just froze, staring at me for a second too long before looking away. "Oh, come on," she said, nudging him. "It's a joke. Grace knows we love her, do I?" I wanted to ask, but I didn't. Instead, I smiled tight, polite, practiced, and set the card down. Of course. A joke. I helped finish setting the tables, my hands shaking slightly as I placed napkins and straightened forks. But something inside me cracked that day, because it wasn't just the nameplate. It was what it represented. Years of being the one who stayed behind to care for Mom while Nathan chased his dreams. Years of covering his half of the bills, defending his choices, watching him succeed while I barely kept my lights on. And now to his fiancée, to their world, I was the charity case. Not the sister. Not the one who'd stood by him when no one else did. Just the story they told to make themselves feel generous. The ceremony went on beautifully. Everyone cried when Emily walked down the aisle. Nathan looked at her like she was made of sunlight. But I couldn't stop staring at that table, at my seat, at that pink card mocking me in silence. I told myself I could get through the dinner. Just eat quietly, toast them, smile for photos, and go home. But during the reception, the jokes began. Emily's maid of honor made a speech like teasing perfectly, rehearsed about how Emily and Nathan had the biggest hearts, even adopting stray causes like Sweet Grace. The room laughed, someone clapped, and I sat there, heat crawling up my neck, eyes burning. That was when I realized this wasn't an accident. This was entertainment. I stood up quietly, gathered my purse, and slipped out the back door before dessert. No scene, no shouting. Just silence. Outside, the night air was cold and sharp, cutting through my dress. I could hear the laughter echoing behind me, their world continuing perfectly without me. I stood under the yellow glow of the parking lot light, clutching my car keys, trying to breathe. My phone buzzed. A message from Nathan. "Where did you go?" "Don't be dramatic, Gracie. It was just a joke. A joke." That's what I was to them. That night, as I drove home, something inside me hardened, not anger, not bitterness, just resolve. If they wanted to call me a charity case, then fine. But from that day forward, I'd make sure they never had to feel burdened by me again. The drive home that night felt longer than it should have. The road was quiet, but my mind wasn't. The wipers brushed across the windshield in rhythm with my heartbeat, clearing away a mist of light rain. I remember looking down at my hands gripping the steering wheel, the same hands that had baked Nathan's favorite pecan pie every Thanksgiving since we were kids. The same hands that had signed hospital forms when Mom was too weak to hold a pen, and yet, somehow, those same hands had placed that pink nameplate on the table earlier that day, not realizing it was meant to shame me. By the time I got home, my makeup had streaked. I didn't even bother turning on the lights. I just kicked off my heels, sat on the edge of the couch, and let the dark room swallow me. My phone buzzed again. Nathan, you really left? Come on. Grace, don't ruin the night. Me, it was already ruined. Nathan, you're overreacting. Emily didn't mean it. You know her humor? Humor? That word felt like vinegar in my mouth. I didn't reply. I turned off my phone and sat in silence, staring at the shadows on the wall. There was something oddly peaceful about that moment, like the quiet after a storm when you finally understand what's been destroyed. I told myself I'd deal with it later, sleep it off. But sleep didn't come. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that pink nameplate. Charity case. The next morning, I woke up to sunlight sneaking through the blinds and the distant hum of traffic. I checked my phone, 10 missed messages, 3 from Nathan, 2 from Emily, 1 from Dad, 4 from numbers I didn't recognize, probably wedding guests trying to smooth things over, or worse, gossip. The messages blurred together, full of phrases like misunderstanding, no harm meant. Everyone thought it was funny. Everyone except me. At noon, Dad called. His voice was firm, careful. "Grace," he said, "I heard you left Nathan's wedding early. What happened?" I hesitated. "You really want to know?" "I'd rather hear it from you than the Clarks." The Clarks, Emily's family. Wealthy, established, influential in ways our family never was. My father, remarried now to a woman who measured worth in social circles, probably wanted to keep peace. I explained everything, the nameplate, the speech, the laughter. When I finished, there was a pause on the line. Then he sighed. "Grace, you can't take everything so personally. You've always been sensitive. Maybe it was a joke." There it was again. A joke. I felt my throat tighten. "Dad, they called me a charity case, in front of everyone. "And you're still my daughter," he said quickly, "but you could have handled it better. Storming out made you look like I have self-respect?" I cut in. He went silent. Then he said, "You're not helping anyone by isolating yourself, Grace. Sometimes you just have to let things go." He hung up before I could reply. That was the moment I realized I was on my own. I'd always been the quiet one in the family, the helper, the peacekeeper, the one who showed up early and stayed late. But maybe that was the problem. Maybe I'd made it too easy for them to overlook me. So I decided something that morning. If they wanted to see me as small, I'd show them how big I could become. Not out of spite, out of survival. The days that followed were quiet, but my mind wasn't still. I went back to work at the bakery, a small sunlit shop on the corner of 8th and Pine. The smell of yeast and vanilla was comforting, familiar. My boss, Mrs. Jennings, greeted me with her usual cheer. "Grace, you're a lifesaver," she said. "Our decorator called in sick again. Think you can cover?" I nodded. Of course. That's the thing about me. No matter how broken I am inside, I keep moving. But that day, as I piped buttercream roses onto a wedding cake, I caught a glimpse of myself in the reflection of the glass case. I looked tired, not just physically, but soul-tired. During lunch break, I scrolled through social media. Nathan and Emily's wedding photos were already up. Perfectly edited. There they were, beaming, glamorous, untouched by guilt. But then I saw something else. A photo of the reception tables. Zooming in, there it was, my seat. The pink card, visible as day, and in the caption written by one of Emily's bridesmaids, "Every wedding needs a little humor. Charity case inside jokes, good times." It had hundreds of likes, dozens of laughing emojis. My stomach turned. They weren't sorry, they were proud. That was when something inside me began to shift, not rage, but a quiet, simmering determination. If they thought they could make a mockery of me, I'd let their actions speak for themselves. I didn't post, didn't comment. Instead, I took a screenshot. Then another, then another. I didn't know what I was going to do with them yet, but I'd need them. Later that evening, I got a call from an unknown number. It was Emily. Her voice was light, cheerful, pretending nothing had happened. "Grace, I was hoping to catch you. How are you?" "I'm fine." "Oh, good. Listen, I just wanted to clear the air. I heard you were upset about the table card. You know we were just teasing, right?" "Right," I said flatly. She laughed softly. "Come on, Grace. You've always been Nathan's sensitive little sister. Everyone knows how much he's done for you. It's kind of an inside joke." Inside joke, those words hit me harder than I expected. I swallowed. An inside joke would require me to be inside your circle, Emily. I'm not. There was silence on the line. Then she said, almost sweetly, "You know, that attitude is exactly why people misunderstand you." And she hung up. That night, I sat in bed, phone still in my hand, staring at the ceiling. I could have cried. I could have screamed. But I didn't. Instead, I opened my laptop. I pulled up my business plan, the one I'd written months ago but never had the courage to act on. Graceful Crumbs, a name I'd chosen for the home-based bakery I dreamed of turning into something bigger. I'd been saving for it slowly, painfully, dollar by dollar. But that night, something told me it was time to stop waiting for permission from family, from life, from anyone. If they saw me as a charity case, then I'd build something that proved them wrong. I'd rebuild my name, one order, one cake, one customer at a time. Over the next few weeks, I threw myself into the work. Every morning before sunrise, I baked. Muffins, cupcakes, cookies. I delivered them to local cafes and offices, leaving little business cards tucked into boxes tied with twine. At night, I tested recipes and redesigned my logo. The exhaustion felt good. It kept my mind from replaying that laughter, that pink nameplate, that word. By the end of the first month, I'd secured 3 regular clients. By the second, 6, and for the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for anyone to save me. But then, one morning, as I dropped off an order at a downtown cafe, I overheard 2 women talking at a corner table. They were scrolling through wedding photos. Emily's wedding photos. She's the one who posted that thing about the charity case, right? One of them said, "Yeah," the other replied. Apparently it was her husband's sister. Can you imagine? They both laughed softly, shaking their heads. People like that think they're above everyone. I'd never humiliate family like that. I froze, because that was when I realized the story was spreading. Not because of me, because of them. When I left the cafe that morning, the air felt different, not lighter exactly, but charged, like something invisible had shifted. It wasn't me spreading the story. It was the story spreading itself. People had seen that photo, read that caption, and drawn their own conclusions. And no matter how carefully Emily had curated her online image, perfect hair, perfect smile, perfect grace. Something in that cruel little inside joke had cracked the surface. I hadn't said a single word publicly, but the silence around me was beginning to speak. Still, I didn't take comfort in that. Not yet, because I knew my brother. Nathan hated embarrassment. He would defend his image to the death. And if whispers started circling his name, he wouldn't take it lying down. So when my phone rang that evening and his name flashed on the screen, I already knew what was coming. "Grace," he started, his tone clipped. "We need to talk." I took a slow breath. About the mess you're making online." I blinked. "I haven't posted anything." "Well, people are talking. Emily's upset. Her bridesmaids say you've been showing that picture around, trying to make her look bad." My stomach twisted. "That's not true," he scoffed. "Grace, come on. You're still mad about a nameplate. You've always been dramatic about things that don't matter." I swallowed. Load hard, forcing my voice to stay calm. "You embarrassed me in front of a room full of people, Nathan. It matters to me." There was silence for a moment, then he laughed, low and humorless. "You know, this is why people can't deal with you. You take everything so personally. It's exhausting." I felt the tears rising, but I wouldn't let him hear them. "Then maybe you should stop doing things that hurt me." He exhaled. "You know what? I don't have time for this. Just stay out of it, Grace. If Emily gets more backlash, that's on you." And then he hung up, just like that. I sat there on the edge of my bed, staring at the phone, my hands shaking. I had been accused of something I didn't do, but worse, I realized my brother didn't even want to know the truth. He just wanted peace, even if it meant letting me take the blame. For a few days, I said nothing. I went to work, baked, delivered orders, smiled at customers, and tried to ignore the slow ache in my chest. Then one evening, as I was cleaning up my tiny kitchen, my doorbell rang. It was Lisa, my closest friend since college, the kind of friend who sees through your "I'm fine" before you even finish saying it. She walked in holding her phone, her eyebrows knitted. "Grace, did you see this?" she said. She turned the screen toward me. It was Emily's Instagram story. A picture of her smiling, sipping wine, captioned, "Some people can't handle a little teasing." Not everyone was raised with a sense of humor. Family drama, let it go. I stared at it in disbelief. Lisa's voice was soft but firm. "She's baiting you." I nodded slowly. "I know, but are you gonna let her?" I looked at her. "I don't know yet." That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake, the moonlight spilling across the floor, replaying every word Emily had ever said to me, every fake compliment, every polite condescension. And beneath all of it, the memory of Mom's voice came back to me. Her favorite saying, "Grace, kindness doesn't mean silence." She used to say that when Dad would overlook something unfair. When Nathan got away with things I never could. Kindness doesn't mean silence. So maybe it was time I stopped being quiet. The next morning, I decided to do something I never thought I'd do. I opened my social media for the first time in weeks. My notifications were flooded, mostly tags from strangers, people discussing the wedding post drama. I took a deep breath and wrote, "For those asking, yes, that nameplate was real. And no, I didn't find it funny. Family should lift you up, not laugh at you. That's all I'll say. I didn't name names. I didn't post pictures. Just truth." Within hours, the post exploded. Hundreds of comments poured in, some sympathetic, others harsh. But what surprised me most were the private messages from people I'd never met, sharing their own stories of being humiliated or overlooked by family. It was like a floodgate had opened, and beneath the anger, there was something deeper, a shared ache that so many people carried quietly. By evening, Nathan called again. This time, his voice was tight. "What did you do, Grace? Emily's getting calls from her boss. My coworker saw that post." "I told the truth," I said quietly. "You embarrassed us. You embarrassed me first." "That's different," he snapped. "Why?" "Because it was a joke. It wasn't serious." "It was serious to me, Nathan. You watched them laugh at me, and you didn't say a word." He went silent. I could hear his breathing, shallow, frustrated. Then he muttered, "You've always been jealous. That's the real problem, isn't it? That one word jealous hit harder than any insult could." I whispered, "Jealous of what? Of being ridiculed? Of being invisible in my own family?" He didn't respond. The line went quiet. Then he hung up again. I remember standing there after the call, staring at the window as the evening light faded. That was when I finally understood something. My brother wasn't defending Emily out of love. He was defending her because she represented the life he wanted, effortless, admired, respected. And I was the reminder of everything he tried to leave behind. The humble beginnings, the small apartment, the late nights caring for Mom, me. Over the next few days, things began to unravel for them. People from Emily's workplace started commenting, some defending her, others not so much. Someone even shared a screenshot of her charity case caption under the table photo. And just like that, her carefully constructed image of perfection began to crumble. The brand deals she'd been negotiating gone. The social media sponsorships she flaunted quiet. Even her friends began distancing themselves. And through it all, I said nothing. Not out of revenge, out of grace. One afternoon, about a week later, there was a knock at my door. When I opened it, Nathan was standing there. No smile, no cologne, just exhaustion written all over him. "Can I come in?" he asked. I nodded. He sat on the couch, rubbing his forehead. "Everything's a mess," he said quietly. "Emily's furious. She says I should have stopped you." I watched him for a moment. "You could have stopped this a long time ago, Nathan." He looked up. "Grace, I didn't mean to hurt you." I believed him, but sometimes intentions don't erase impact. "I know," I said softly, "but you did." He exhaled, leaning back. "You've always been the better one. You never fight back." I smiled faintly. "Maybe that's changing." He looked at me, and for the first time in years I saw something real in his eyes, regret. He said, "I should have defended you." I nodded. "You should have." That conversation didn't fix everything, but it cracked something open, like sunlight finally breaking through a wall of gray. He left quietly that evening, saying he'd try to make things right. And though I didn't know if he could, I knew this much: I finally had my voice back. Nathan's visit stayed with me for days. He had come in looking defeated, the same brother who used to laugh the loudest, talk the fastest, charm his way through any situation. Now he had no defense left. After he left, I sat on the couch staring at the spot where he'd been, the faint scent of his cologne still lingering. I thought about how many times I'd tried to protect his image, even when he didn't deserve it. I'd covered for him when Mom got sick and he missed visits. I'd helped him pay off debts he never admitted to anyone else. I'd done it all quietly, out of love, but love without respect, that's just servitude. I promised myself I'd never fall into that again. That week, orders at Graceful Crumbs doubled. Word of mouth spread faster than I could keep up with. A few local blogs had picked up my story, though they didn't name names. People connected the dots. Customers came in with soft smiles and encouraging words. "Good for you, honey. You handled that with such dignity." My sister went through something like that too. Their kindness surprised me. It reminded me that strength doesn't always roar. Sometimes it's the quiet decision to keep showing up. One afternoon, as I was frosting cupcakes, Lisa stopped by the shop. She leaned against the counter, grinning. "You've gone viral, Miss Charity Case." I laughed, the first real laugh in weeks. "Please don't call me that. I mean it," she said. "You're trending. People are sharing your quote, 'Family should lift you up, not laugh at you.' It's everywhere." I set the spatula down, feeling both stunned and oddly calm. "It wasn't supposed to be a movement," I said. "It was just my truth." Lisa smiled gently. "Sometimes truth is contagious." Later that evening, as I was locking up the bakery, I got a text from an unknown number. "Hi, Grace. It's Emily." For a second, I just stared at the screen. My thumb hovered over delete. But then another message came in. "I'd like to meet. Just the two of us. Please." We met the next day at a small cafe near the river neutral ground. She arrived wearing dark sunglasses, her hair pulled into a perfect bun. Even in distress, she looked immaculate. When she took them off, though, her eyes looked tired, ringed with sleeplessness, a little red around the edges. "Grace," she said quietly, setting her purse down. "Thank you for coming." I nodded. "You said you wanted to talk." She took a slow breath. I know you hate me right now, and maybe you should, but I need you to understand something that Nameplate. It wasn't my idea. I didn't react, I just let her speak. She hesitated. It was one of my bridesmaids. Madison. She thought it would be funny. I should have stopped her, but I didn't want to make a scene. Her voice trembled just slightly at the end, but I could tell she was choosing her words carefully, the way people do when they're still trying to protect their image. Emily, I said, keeping my tone even, you didn't have to put it there. But you let it stay. She nodded, her jaw tightening. You're right. And I've paid for it. I lost 2 clients, my PR contract is on hold, and my name is in every gossip thread imaginable. I've been called everything from a bully to a witch. I studied her face, the smooth perfection now cracked by exhaustion. You wanted to humiliate me to make yourself look superior, I said quietly. Now people are doing the same to you. Doesn't feel very funny, does it? Her eyes flickered with something, maybe shame, maybe anger. Grace, she whispered, I made a mistake, I know that. But please, can you say something online? Just clarify that I didn't mean to hurt you? There it was. Not remorse, desperation. I stared at her for a long moment before answering. You didn't mean to hurt me, but you did. And that's what people need to remember. Intentions don't erase consequences. She opened her mouth to speak again, but I stopped her. I'm not going to attack you, Emily. I'm not even going to mention you again. But I won't lie for you. For a moment, the mask slipped and I saw the flash of irritation in her eyes. The kind of irritation people feel when they realize their charm no longer works. She gathered her purse, standing up. You've really made this easy for yourself, haven't you? Playing the victim? I looked up at her calmly. No, I just stopped playing small. She left without another word. Over the next few weeks, the storm around Nathan and Emily didn't die down, it shifted. More people began speaking up, not just about the wedding, but about small cruelties in families, the invisible hierarchies that turn love into currency. It became bigger than me, bigger than us. I stayed quiet, focused on my bakery, but one Sunday Nathan showed up again. This time, he wasn't alone. Emily was with him. They looked different. Smaller somehow. Can we come in? Nathan asked. I hesitated, then opened the door. They sat on the couch, hands clasped. Emily spoke first. Grace, I owe you an apology. Her tone was quieter now, no practice softness, no performance, just words. I let my insecurity make me cruel. I saw how close you and Nathan were, and I wanted to feel superior. It's not an excuse, but it's the truth. Her voice cracked slightly. I'm sorry. Nathan nodded beside her. And I'm sorry for not standing up for you. You deserved better from me. I felt a lump in my throat, but I held steady. Apologies don't erase pain, but they can start to close the wound. Thank you, I said simply. We talked for a while, awkwardly at first, then slowly, more openly. They told me about the backlash, about how people they'd trusted had turned cold. I told them about Graceful Crumbs, how the bakery was growing. Emily even smiled faintly. You're doing well, she said. That's good. You deserve it. It wasn't reconciliation, not yet. But it was recognition. After they left, I stood by the window for a long time, watching them walk to the car. For the first time since that wedding, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel like anyone's charity case. I felt whole. Weeks later, a local newspaper reached out to feature my bake. Ryan, a story about small women-owned businesses. They titled it From Charity Case to Graceful Crumbs. At first, I hated the headline. It felt like a reminder of everything I'd gone through. But then I read the article. It wasn't about the scandal. Out of the strange beauty of it all. That somehow, through heartbreak and humiliation, I'd become a mirror for other people's healing. Spring came around again, and with it, wedding season. I started getting custom orders from brides. At first I wanted to turn them all down. The word wedding still tasted bitter in my mouth, but I realized something important. It wasn't the institution I hated. It was what mine had represented, mockery disguised as celebration. So when a nervous bride came in asking for a cake that feels like love, I smiled and said, I can do that. I baked her a 4-tier white cake with pressed lavender and a hand-painted inscription that said, Love that nourishes, not humiliates. When she came to pick it up, she read the line, then looked at me with tears in her eyes. She whispered, Did you write that? I nodded. She said, Then that's exactly what I want on the top tier. It became a quiet signature for my bakery. Every wedding cake had a hidden line of encouragement written somewhere small, a whisper of truth beneath the sugar. One afternoon, I got a call from Nathan. He sounded nervous. "Grace, would you come over for dinner?" I hesitated. It had been months since we'd last spoken, but something in his voice, soft, uncertain, made me say yes. When I arrived, Emily was there too, setting the table. The house looked different, not grand or showy anymore, just lived in. There were toys on the couch, framed photos on the walls, and then I noticed the biggest change. Emily was pregnant. She smiled shyly when she saw me notice. 7 months, she said. "It's a girl." Something inside me softened. Nathan hugged me gently, and for a moment it felt like being kids again, before pride, before pain. We sat down to eat, and halfway through the meal, Emily said quietly, "We want to name her Grace." My fork paused mid-air. I looked up at her, eyes wide. "Not because we owe you," she said quickly, tears forming, "but because you showed us what the word really means." The silence that followed wasn't heavy. It was full of forgiveness, of something mended but not forgotten. That night when I got home, I looked at the stars and whispered, "Thank you." Not to anyone in particular, just to the life that had hurt me enough to remake me. Months later, when little baby Grace was born, I visited the hospital. She was wrapped in a soft pink blanket, eyes barely open, her tiny hand curling around my finger. Nathan looked up and said, "You're her godmother, by the way." I laughed through tears. "Is that so?" Emily smiled. "It's only fitting." And for the first time in a long time, I felt peace. Not the kind that comes from forgetting, but the kind that comes from finally understanding. I used to think dignity was about keeping quiet, about smiling through tears, about letting people's opinions shape your worth. But I've learned it's the opposite. Dignity is the moment you say, "I love you, but I love myself more." It's walking out of rooms that mock your heart. It's choosing solitude over spectacle. It's realizing that your nameplate, no matter what someone else writes on it, still belongs to you. Sometimes healing doesn't look like revenge or applause. It looks like waking up at 5 a.m. to bake bread in a small kitchen with your favorite song playing. It looks like customers smiling when they bite into something you made with your own hands. It looks like learning to laugh again, softly, at your own reflection. I still have that nameplate. It sits on a little shelf in the bakery, right next to the cash register. People ask about it sometimes, why charity case is crossed out. I just tell them that's not who I am anymore. And when I see them smile, I know they understand, because we've all been labeled something unfair at some point. But what matters isn't what they call you, it's what you answer to. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, I closed up the bakery and turned the lights off. The air smelled faintly of sugar and vanilla. Outside, a couple walked by holding hands, laughing softly, and for once I didn't feel left out. I felt full. Not every story gets a perfect ending, but this one, mine, finally got an honest one. And that, I think, is better. Sometimes life doesn't hand you justice, it hands you choices. To forgive, to rebuild, to keep your peace sacred. And if you ever find yourself sitting at a table where your name is mocked, remember, my dear, you don't have to stay there. You can always build your own table. And maybe one day, someone else will find shelter at it too.